What's going on, guys? J-Shirmp here. So I made a video of me setting up a 10 gallon, which is this tank right here. It's a neocardina tank, or will be. And I was discussing how I would, update you guys on how it's going. Now, I was talking on a Facebook group, and I brought up discussion about ammonia sources for starting a cycle, the nitrogen cycle, and how beneficial bacteria grows on your filter to filter out any bad particles or fish waste, like poo, old food. Now, most people, they have two ways they do it. They do a fish-in cycle or a fishless. I like doing a fishless cycle, as do most shrimp keepers. Just it builds up the bacteria more rigorously, so that it can withstand high swings in ammonia, and dissolve that into a safe matter for the fish or the shrimp to not be harmed at all. Have high ammonia and kill them, high nitrates, high nitrites. So basically, what happened is I was discussing about how ammonia in tap water doesn't need any additional addition of ammonia to start a cycle, because, as you know, ammonia is required to start that cycle. You can't just not put anything in and think it's going to start. So basically, I live here in Toronto, and we have most shrimp keepers here who keep neocardina use tap water. The tap water here contains chloramines, nitrates, nitrites, and some ammonia. And chloramine is chlorine and ammonia bonded together. So technically, that's extra ammonia. Now, the thing is that the ammonia content alone is not high enough to really start a cycle in a sense of how long it would take. You would probably need to add more to be able to stock fish within a month or two, obviously checking parameters before that. But basically, what I figured out is that when you add something to condition your water, for example, Seachem Prime, what Seachem Prime does is it actually removes chlorine, removes any toxic metals and minerals, mostly metals. There's really no toxic minerals per se, and it says it removes chloramine, but it doesn't really remove chloramine. What it does is unbinds chlorine and ammonia, and it takes that chlorine portion of the chloramine and it gets rid of it. Any nitrates, nitrites, and ammonia in the water left over, it binds it together for about 24 to 48 hours, and then it releases that bind. So basically, you'll have ammonia in the water, nitrates and nitrites. Now, basically, you're now giving your water a dosage of ammonia, technically, or your fish tank, sorry. So you really don't have to add anything. Like some people, they use fish food. Some people, they use raw shrimp from the grocery store. I think that's a bit counterintuitive, especially when you're keeping shrimp. Some people, they do add bottled ammonia, which I think is the best way, because they can control how much ammonia they put in. And there are bottled bacteria solutions out there. I'm not a fan of them. There is one solution I tried once last year. It seemed to work, but again, fishless cycle, building your own bacteria is always the best. I went to go and say, you know what, let me fill it up, set the tank up, and I'm going to test it in like 2 days, or 2 or 3 days. So we're on the third day now, and I use my API freshwater testing kit for ammonia. Would you look at this? There's ammonia in the water. So if you match this up with the color comparison on the chart, this is around 3 parts per million. So basically, there's ammonia in the water to start the cycle. I didn't have to add anything. So it's quite interesting that most of the time when people are trying to do fishless cycles, it's kind of tough, and you have to wait a very long time. And I'm not saying this is something that's going to be ready within a week. It could take a month, 2 months, sometimes even 3 months. But it's just nice that, you know, I don't have to go out and spend that extra money for bottled ammonia. I don't have to, you know, for example, I have some Tropica fish flakes here, right? I don't have to go and crank this open and start, you know, dosing this thing with fish food every, you know, day or every other day to, you know, put an ammonia source in there to feed the bacteria. It's got it there already. So it brings up one of the things that, you know, a lot of people who are veterans per se, or seasoned fish keepers, where they're doing a fishless cycle, or they're setting up a new tank, and they say, oh, you know, just fill the tank up and wait. That's what I've done for 20 years, 25 years. And you end up finding out that, you know, they're under the assumption that you just fill it up and it just does it by itself, but it ends up that there is ammonia in their tap water. Now, I'm not saying that, you know, oh my God, there's ammonia in the tap water, you're going to die. Our bodies can break down a certain level of ammonia. Like I tested the water right from the tap, and I was getting 1 parts per million. That's nothing. Body can handle that, no problem. But in the world of fish keeping, that works out really well for us. So, yeah. So basically, what this video was about is that I was able to find out that the tap water here has ammonia, and I didn't have to add any other additives to start the cycle for my fish, for my shrimp, sorry. So yeah, we're gonna let this keep going. As you can tell, it is a little bit cloudy still. It was a lot cloudier yesterday, I can tell you that. So the bacteria is starting to settle. So I did test for nitrites and nitrates. They're both not reading, so that means that, you know, it's still in the first stage. So you have to give it time. Don't, you know, again, don't rush it. And then one thing I didn't show you guys last time is I actually ended up picking up a 5-gallon here. And this 5-gallon here, I have a filter in it that's already seeded from my 4-gallon, which is all the way over there, if you can see it. This has a seeded filter in it. So basically what I did is I filled it up. Obviously I put some sand, I put some bacteria in there. I actually put some plants that I got from a friend. Quarantined the plants, of course. I don't like putting plants in right away. I do like to quarantine my plants just because everyone's tank has different parameters. And then, yeah, basically I set that up. Once that was set up, I let it run for about 24 hours with the filter. I tested the ammonia, the nitrates and the nitrites. I went ahead and tested just the pH. I know the GH and the KH are going to be fine, but I tested the pH just in case. But everything was coming out fine. And what I did is, when I did have shrimp before, I'll tell you a little bit of a story. So I wanted to keep shrimp before, in a sense of being able to actually be a breeder. And I had a table with 6 10-gallon tanks on it, and I was going to be breeding different variations of neocardina. What ended up happening though is one day I went into the room where my tanks were, and the actual table in the center started cracking. Now it didn't crack where the tanks crashed, thank God. That would have been a horrible mess and, you know, an unfortunate amount of dead shrimp. But the table was starting to crack a little bit in the center. So the only option I had at the time, I didn't have any other space to kind of do a move around, was I had to shut down the tanks. So I did take the shrimps. I gave them to respectable, you know, trustworthy keepers. They still have those shrimps today. But I did have this little 4-gallon cube on my end table, and I said, you know what, I'm going to keep a couple of shrimp because I had some other fish in there. I didn't want to put a whole bunch of shrimp and them getting eaten because just there's a massive amount of shrimp. So what I did is I slowly added a couple of shrimp. The fish in there didn't mind, and they haven't tried to eat them ever since. So I've had some shrimp in there for about, it's been maybe almost a year now. And it's a little interesting because about 3/4 of the shrimp actually ended up getting their wild coloration, like they're brown with like a brown coloration on their back, and basically they ended up getting their wild coloration because they were mixed in with other fish. They weren't just put there alone where they can, you know, be the color they originally are. Obviously, depending how the breeding goes down the line, things can change for generations if you don't do culling. But yeah, no, they were alive. They never died off. So there was 1 or 2 that did keep their coloration. They're yellow King Kongs, which I still have those. And basically, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna put them in a 5-gallon, and I want to have that as like a yellow neocardina tank, but I wanted to see if the wild coloration neos would how they would do, being removed from the environment of not being around other species of fish, just them being, you know, just with their own species. I wanted to see if they would actually get their coloration back, maybe by breeding down the line with you know, with a male and a female. So no, but I decided to put them in there. Like I said, I tested all the parameters, everything is fine. The nitrates, I believe, when I tested it, was around just around, like when I went to match the color, it was lurching on like 10, so it's below 20, and I believe that's acceptable. You know, you're never going to have 0 nitrates. If you do, then you're the fish keeping god. Like, it's really hard to do that, but you know, it is possible. Yeah, no, they're doing great in there. There's a log floating in there right now because that was the one I had in here. I boiled it, but that didn't seem to fix the problem I had with it not sinking, because, you know, usually you do boil like, you know, things like driftwood or any wood to put in the tank, but it still wants to float. So it was floating like this, now it's like that, so it seems like it's on its way down to the bottom. But yeah, no, the shrimp are in there, they're happy, they're grazing. I haven't seen any, you know, signs of death or stress. They're just enjoying themselves, finally being back in an environment where they, you know, feel you know, more comfortable. And like I said, there wasn't any issues in the 4-gallon. They weren't, you know, experiencing any stress by fish trying to eat them or anything. You know, they were able to graze, but you could tell that they wanted to kind of not be out in the public, out in the open. They would always try to hide under a plant, or I have some Indian almond leaves in there. They would go underneath there. I do have a fan shrimp in there. He could care less who's around him. He just sits on the filter and munches on the filter all day. He's just having a party. Like, I removed that filter, you could tell he gets upset because he's on that filter 24/7. So yeah, he's my buddy. I've had him for almost 2 years, and yeah, that guy's awesome. But yeah, so anyways, so we're gonna see what happens with this tank. I'm gonna let it run, see if the bacteria continues on, if we see nitrates or nitrites. Maybe in a couple weeks we'll get some yellow neocardinas for the 5-gallon, and see if we can get a colony going there. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.